Hello everybody and welcome to another video here at Playing Board Games. I'm Justin and today I'm here to talk about the environment announcements in greater detail from the July 2025 FAQ update. If you've already watched my video going through the FAQ update, you actually have probably heard everything I'm about to say in this video, but I'm going to be reiterating a lot of that here and kind of just taking a more focused look on the current legacy and limited formats because we have a beta version of what they are. I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me go through my slides that I prepared, and then we're going to start talking about all of this. So, first off, with the new FAQ and taboo list, we also received the first update regarding environments since their announcement earlier this year. If you don't remember, at the start of this year, or close to the start of this year, they announced that there was going to be a change to the release cycle of ARKHAM and Marvel Champions. They also included Lord of the Rings in the announcement, but we haven't heard anything about Lord of the Rings. But basically, expansions are going to start cycling out, rotating out of print, going to be, out of print status. And there was going to be kind of a focus of a legacy environment where you could play with all your cards, and current where you could only play with what was in rotation at the time. While this update is a beta version of the idea of environments, there's likely enough here to start discussing what current legacy and the new limited environment will be. First off, what is an environment? If you have played other card games, you might recognize environments as formats, or alternatively that rotation is coming to ARKHAM. This is something I just said, where products are going to be cycling out of stock. And this means that they're no longer going to be in print, and things that were once always available, unfortunately, are no longer going to be available. There are pros and cons to all this, but this isn't a new thing in card games. While ARKHAM is co-op, it's still a card game, and formats are healthy to bring to the game. This is aside from all of the out-of-print stuff, which I'm going to be touching on a little bit later in this video, but essentially, rotation is coming. If you've played card games, you know what rotation is. That's not exactly a new word to you if you've played other competitive card games. It hasn't really happened in a co-op game that I know off the top of my head, but I think that ultimately it is probably something that should have happened to ARKHAM a long time ago. Like maybe, I don't know, 4 years ago. Probably around the time that maybe like when Edge of the Earth was released. This should have been something that happened earlier, and I think that ultimately, while I say here there are pros and cons, I think ultimately it is going to be a positive for the game as a whole. I think once again I'm getting ahead of myself here with my slides. I have a bunch of stuff that I need to talk about first before we actually get into it because of reasons. Formats are rules that define what cards are available for you to play and build your decks with. While the FAQ called these variants optional, ultimately you are always going to be playing a format when you play ARKHAM Horror the card game. This will provide little change to the players, will provide a lot of change to the design team. Again, this is aside from the printing stuff. We're going to put that aside here because this is all about the formats themselves. All a format is, if you don't know, as I've talked about rotation on the last slide here, is that it just defines what cards are available to you for building and playing with your deck. So this includes investigator, player cards, and weaknesses, right? This is all going to be determined here by the format that you play. The FAQ says that these are optional, but I think ultimately they're not, right? Because no matter what, you're going to be engaging with some sort of format when you play ARKHAM. Whether this be current, whether this be legacy with some sort of weird hook, or you build your own limited, it ultimately is going to fall into one of these spaces that exist within the game. They also had a new limited one that also seemed pretty cool once we get to that one. But really, it doesn't matter, right? These variants don't actually matter too much for most players as a whole. This is really going to matter more for Fantasy Flight Games, number one, because they are now designing these expansions with a specific set of cards in mind, as opposed to needing to figure out every card at once. They also said that because of this, they're not going to worry too much about cards that are in Legacy, because those cards exist for the Legacy environment, and Legacy is designed to be super powerful. So this means that if there's a practice skill that is particularly busted with Practice Makes Perfect, we're not going to be like, wait a minute, you should really consider Practice Makes Perfect for this, because the design team is already like, Practice Makes Perfect for our current design ethos doesn't exist anymore. And I think that is exciting because, one, the snapshots of the format will be balanced, And Legacy is going to be where it's very powerful, where players have more control of what they're building with, right? So while this card that is really good, like let's just talk about Enraptured, right? Enraptured 2, very good with Practice Makes Perfect, very good with Amanda Sharp. But those, as we know, and you'll know later in this video, aren't in the current format anymore. So they're very powerful in Legacy, but Legacy is designed to be powerful. Players have control over what they want to play in Legacy, so the people who want power can seek power out. The players who don't want that power can just play with all the other cards available to them. So again, while I've seen people say in my comments on my videos of just like that, this is Fantasy Flight Games making rules for how they can play, ultimately we've been playing Legacy the whole time. Like, Legacy is what Arkham has always been, right? But now there's just a word for it. So when you tell someone, I'm playing Legacy, they know what that means. And I'm going to talk a bit more about that later on as well, as I have a little list of things that I want to talk about before the video is done. Before I get through this list of things that I've already started talking about when the video started. So, as mentioned, in this video, I'm not here to discuss product going out of print. That is a consequence that likely led to the idea of formats, but I believe that formats in the current environment are a net benefit for the game. I think design is going to be tighter in theory. We have to see if this actually holds true, but it's a lot easier to design in a slice than it is to design for like a whole frickin' pizza, right? Even though if you put pepperoni on it, you realize someone a few weeks ago put apple on the pizza and you're like already a little bit fricked up, right? So we're not here to discuss the things going out of print. I get it. It's a bummer, right? But ultimately, it's old news at this point, and we're just going to keep going forward and just talking about specifically current Legacy Limited. And I think that while rotation was a necessity that they had to do and had to decide in order to keep these games going, I don't think they started with current and then made the printing decision. I mean, the printing decision was made and then they made current from that. On this channel, we will be engaging with all three formats and we'll have discussion videos regarding both current and Legacy. So likewise in my previous thing where how it ultimately doesn't really matter to the player base, the other thing that it affects is us as content creators. We now have more to talk about for Arkham. We can build decks for current. We can talk about current. We can build decks for Legacy. We can talk about Legacy. We can play current, Legacy, and Limited. So ultimately, this is going to surge in more discussion about the game from our perspective, which is part of the reason why I am pretty excited about this and why I think it's going to be a net benefit, because it allows for just a little bit more like discussion with each expansion, which means the community, in theory, again, should be more engaged because of that. So an example is right now, when Drowned City came out, we got all the cards and we were able to talk about those cards in the entire card pool, and that was really cool. But now, when the next expansion comes out, we get to talk about those cards in the scope of the entire card pool in terms of its impact on Legacy. But we also get to talk about what it adds to the current environment. So, we get to talk about Feast of Hemlock Vale, Drowned City, and the new expansion when it comes out, right? Because we know that that is what the format's going to be. And then when it rotates out, we can also talk about what these cards leaving current are going to impact with the format, and we can like figure out how the meta of current is going to shift when new releases come out. And I think that this is very exciting because, again, one of my favorite things to do is to talk about Arkham. That's why I make videos every day about Arkham. And it's going to be fun to have more to discuss with myself, you guys, and other content creators. Additionally, this is important. It does not matter what formats you want to play. I'm of the belief that this announcement brought out a lot of bad faith arguments about this game in a lot of different directions, and in the end, this is just another way to play Arkham. Very little is going to change. Very little is going to change for you. I also imagine a lot of people, when they start playing current, are eventually going to go into Legacy, just like how you first started buying, let's like, for example, Dunwich Legacy, Carcosa, Forgotten Age, and your expansion grew over time. I imagine a similar thing is going to happen. I think ultimately this is going to do very little to change Arkham on our end as players and consumers. We are just going to continue to engage with the game because we like the game, but it does not matter what formats you play. So let people who want to play current, play current. Let people who want to play legacy, play legacy. And the designers are already of this belief by calling these kind of like an optional variant. Even though, as I said earlier, I don't necessarily agree that these are optional because a format always exists. But ultimately, it's just a way to play Arkham. And there's no like wrong way to play Arkham. It's just now we have like a standard environment if you've played Magic the Gathering. So, I only say all of this thing, this whole big lead-in, because all of this is stuff that I expect to come up in the comments, and I want to head it off while I can. So let's dive in, actually talk about the details of these new formats, and start getting into a little bit of a kind of in-depth look at these. So sorry that it took me 10 minutes to get there, but trust me, all of that was necessary because of all the comments I've seen on previous one of these videos that I've talked about in the current environments. All right, current. Current consists of the Arkham Horror core, both the original and the revised, the 5 starter decks, Nat Cho, Harvey Walters, Winifred Havemuck, Jacqueline Fine, Stella Clark, and the 3 most recently released Investigator expansions. So at the time of the Drowned City release, we are currently in the Drowned City current environment. It includes Scarlet Keys, Feast of Hemlock Vale, and the Drowned City. What this means is, 1, current is only going to be these. With what we have for the current beta, like this might change, that's why it's a beta. They might alter these around, right? But what we know is that in current, we're going to have Arkham Core, 5 starter decks, and 3 expansions. That is going to be what the current card pool is when we're talking about that. This also means everything that is not within this environment is going to go out of print. This is when things cycle out. So in theory, we can kind of suppose, we can kind of guess, we kind of hypothesize that when the next expansion comes out, Scarlet Keys is going to rotate out, it's going to leave print, and then it's going to be Feast of Hemlock Vale, Drowned City, and the newest expansion, as I mentioned earlier in this video. One thing I gotta say is that this is pretty close to what a lot of people expected. There were some people talking about, like, there was like an announcement about Evergreen product, and people assumed that Dunnage Legacy would be here because it's always been in the game and it's always felt like Core Plus. But I think ultimately the starter decks have kind of just done a better job of giving all the classes something that they were missing and kind of like refining it. Rogues are very, very happy that they kept the starter decks. Because, like, same with also the Mystics. Like, Rogues and Mystics are very happy with this. All the starter decks are very good for the card pool, right? And it's nice that these guys now all have these consistently in their pool. So, one thing that I think is very critical with current is that I hope the designers and the design team and everyone at FFG keep this updated rigorously. So what I mean by that is it shouldn't fall on us as players to know when rotation happens, right? Because, like, for example, right now, Drowned City released, I don't even know when Drowned City released. Like, I think it was, like, earlier this year, right? It was, like, March, I know it was, like, February, March. It was a while ago, right? But we didn't get the FAQ for the Drowned City until July 2025. So a few months after Drowned City was released. And I understand that things can get caught up, things get tied up, and there might be reasons why things can't get released when they do. However, if the designers and the higher-ups and just everyone at FFG want to have current rotation, they need to be more on the ball about making sure that the players know when things happen. So, for example, when an announcement article comes out, they should release a new FAQ document or wherever, like, sorry, not an announcement article, when a release article comes out, like when it's like, the Drowned City has released, like that article, you know, they release it on FFG whenever it goes live. On the same day that it is officially released to the public, right, there needs to be an article that also announces, either included in that or a separate article, that says the FAQ has changed and the current environment has changed. We need to know when it happens immediately. If they want current to be current, it needs to be current. We can't, as players, have this window where, like, is this new set active, right? Like, I know they say, like, the 3 most recently released Investigator expansions, so you kind of can just, like, have it be something that we assume it works. But I think in order to have that kind of, like, respect for the player base, this needs to be something that is updated or like live and organically as it changes. So when the announcement article comes out, it's also the FAQ has been updated to reflect the newest format, because right now the FAQ, if I just scroll down to the bottom over here, says Scarlet Keys, Feast of Hemlock Vale, and Drowned City, right? So like those, it actually says that here. So that needs to change, whether it be that there's further clarification and like the expansions aren't specified in the FAQ document, or they just have like, they just keep it updated as it comes, right? Like current needs to be current. We need to know when it happens, and we need to know any changes that come with it as they happen, because then that allows better conversation, no weird miscommunication where people don't know. I'm optimistic, but also a little bit pessimistic that that's going to happen. I'm not too sure, just because, again, of the delays of how these things happen, which I, as much as I understand with myself as a person, I know that now things are really going to start mattering more for that kind of thing. Communication needs to be more open about this kind of stuff, and it needs to happen in official channels for it to actually, I think, really stick. Okay, one thing as well is that this is actually something that I've seen on my own Discord, so some people might not know this about current, but investigators rotate out too. I've seen some people talk about, I want to play this William Yorick deck in current. And current actually doesn't work like that. There's a format later on that we can talk about for how that works, but William Yorick, for example, our good friend Will, he is rotating out as well. So like Silas Marsh, my guy, he's not in current anymore, right? With this thing here, our investigators for current are limited to Roland Banks, Nathaniel Cho, and then when we have Carson Sinclair, who the hell is the guardian from Feast of Hemlock Vale? Wilson Richards and Marion, right? Like those are our legal guardians at that point, which is a funny thing to say. But like those are the guardians that we have that are actually available in the current environment. So that's something that you also need to be aware of when you are looking at current. Investigators and even basic weaknesses count too. So if you roll a basic weakness, and you're playing current and you play like a basic weakness from Return to the Path to Carcosa, for an example, that also is no longer legal for current. You're now entering a legacy environment. These sounds like things that are like weird little edge cases that make it weird and complicated. But you just have to remember, these are the only things. This thing on this slide right here, at the current moment for the beta release of the current environment, are the only things that are actually legal. So it's very important when you have discussions around the game to reflect that. Because what, again, these environments do is they facilitate discussion. We now can talk about current, legacy, and limited to a lesser extent. I think limited ultimately is really cool, but it's more for gameplay than it is for theorizing, because most of limited also kind of falls into legacy. But what you're going to see ultimately, I imagine, in things like Arkham Build and Arkham DB, there's going to be tags that are like current or legacy, right? And that is going to be then a way you can look at a deck and you can be like, oh, this is from the Drowned City Legacy, so I know it was Drowned City in the 2 cycles before it, right? And I think that it's just an important thing to keep in mind. And it's going to become more natural as this becomes more ingrained, especially like when we start making videos too. You'll probably like have a better understanding for it as we talk about it. But ultimately, Travis, Brent, and I are excited for rotation. Eric is too. I think Eric is going to still play Legacy for a bit, but Travis, Brent, and I are probably going to bounce between them. Brent even mentioned wanting to do like a run of past currents throughout it, which also seems like a really fun idea. But ultimately, I've been saying ultimately a lot lately, and it's going to be like when someone's saying notably, and if you're in my head and you're crushing me like a little pebble. I think that in the end, current is good, and I'm excited to start theory crafting and making some videos about it. Now, if you don't want to play current, as I mentioned, that is totally okay. There is also the legacy environment, which just is all investigators, player cards, and weaknesses from any Arkham Horror the card game product. There are no restrictions in this format. You can do whatever the hell you want. This is how Arkham has always been, and how Arkham will continue to be. So if you've been playing Legacy your whole life with Arkham and you want to keep playing it, go for it. Just be sure to, if you're engaging in discussion when people are talking about current, don't be like, you should put this Legacy card in their deck. Ultimately, you got me again, crushing me like a little pebble. You don't want to turn someone's if someone wants to play current, let them play current, suggest things in current, or just don't engage in that part of the discussion. But it's one of those things that if you're building legacy, you can do whatever you want, and that's just the Arkham that you know and love. Likewise, people playing current, if someone's playing legacy, don't be like, why aren't you playing current? It's the way to play Arkham. Ultimately, you got me again. These are ways to. I'm gonna have to end this video soon, or else I'm gonna like get crushed. It's like I'm just like, you threw me off my game. You're in my head right now. These are just ways to play Arkham, and Arkham is fun. So let people play Arkham, right? So I imagine that a lot of people are going to play Legacy. I also imagine there's going to be a very common current into Legacy pipeline where people start playing current, and then as they buy new things, and like they're, say for example, someone has bought Drowned City, and they bought Scarlet Keys, Feast of Hemlock Vale. When the new product comes out, I imagine they're just going to stay in Legacy, right? I think that current is going to just stay with like more of the design team and people who play a lot of Arkham and want like some change of pace as well, because I think that's what's exciting for me, is there's a little bit like of some variety when it comes to this. We already do these challenge runs with like limited collections all the time, and now we just have like a more official way and like a smaller scope. And for Travis, Brent, and I, it kind of harkens back to the days of like Forgotten Age, when the game was, when the card pool was a lot tighter and you had to like squeeze to make things work. We like that kind of thing, and that's why we're particularly excited for current. Speaking of those challenges, the other environment they announced in this, which I actually thought was pretty cool, was the limited environment. So this includes Arkham Horror Core, Original Revised, the 5 starter decks, and 3 different investigator expansions of your choice. So a very similar environment to current, but it has a little bit of some variance as well in terms of like how you want to go about it. As I said, I think this is going to have less discussion than current and legacy, but I still think there is going to be good gameplay that comes from this, and like some good theory crafting that comes from this, so I'm pretty excited about it. All right, one thing is, there's also, I didn't put this here, but so if playing in a group, the group must decide whether or not each player may use their own limited environment, or if the group wishes to play with the same chosen limited environment. And as an optional variant, you may choose to include investigators and their signatures from each expansion in your collection. So this is kind of like Legacy and Current pushed together. And this is also, as I mentioned earlier, if you want to play Current but you want to play Will Yorick, you are essentially playing Limited at that point. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? Like, there's nothing wrong with doing that. But they, while living with these formats, they gave a lot of options for you as players to kind of hone in on how you wanted to play, which I think is very fun when that happens. So that's me. I think Limited is really cool. I also like that it's very similar to the things that Travis, Brent, and I have been doing lately, so I'm particularly excited about that one. Lastly, parallels and promos. So this is from the FAQ. The existence of parallels, promos, and story assets earned within certain scenarios may prompt additional questions regarding whether or not they may be used in a given environment. These cards exist out of a defined environment and structure and may be utilized at the group's discretion. So parallels live in current. It's kind of like what this comes in, right? Like if you want to build a current deck with parallel skids, go for it. It's totally legal from what this seems to think. It's just like up to the person, which I think is fair, because parallels especially, kind of, they do live in a weird space where they're like real but not real. So yeah. So those are the 3 Arkham formats, and now that we have a beta state of these formats, you can look forward to on the channel for videos discussing the new formats in greater details. I have a tier list that I'm going to be recording on the channel right away that should be coming, like looking at the power level of the current investigators to kind of see how they're all looking, so that's going to be pretty fun. Do I have anything I want to talk about on my list of things here? I guess the last thing is just that I feel like the big thing again is that this is just like a change to design principles. We're going to see, I hope, tighter card designs and expansions that kind of like work with each other in like their little slice. And there's like going to be more like synergy with like the expansion that came before and then the expansion that comes next in different like little sections of the box. But I think the game is going to continue to go, and as players, this isn't going to really like change too much for us. I think that as a whole, the game is going to stay very similar from our perspective as consumers. My only hope is that FFG keeps the current environment updated with like we don't want the community guessing on changes to the current environment. They need to know when it happens immediately. Even though like the update kind of infers that, they need to either like make the language more vague, right? Like more open to be like you can look at it at any time and understand what it means without like specific mentions of expansions, or alternatively have updates happen like when they happen. But honestly, I think that just more communication is good. And I know that the designers will obviously want that too, but it's hard when it's a design team of, what, 3 people? Like, that's pretty tough. That's pretty tough. All right, everybody. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. I'm very excited for Current. I can't wait to start crafting for this. I imagine you're going to see an expansion in the near future where we're going to try to like start trying one of these current environments out, maybe on our Drowned City rerun. I think that could be really fun. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a good one, and as always, the GGs.